Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
Time for True Show is sponsored by the Office of Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, a periodontal, dental implant and laser specialist in New York City, for over 40 years. Dr. Fialkoff was honored by the International College of Dentists and Pierre Fauchard, and received the Presidential Lifetime Humanitarian Honor from the White House. Call us at 718-229-3838.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome to A Time for True Show. I'm your host, Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, and it's a pleasure to have you back with us again today. And, you know, it seems like our world, there's been a proliferation and so much prevalence of different type of drugs and medications and chemotherapies, and you know, makes me as a doctor wonder, wow, what's happened to alternatives? Are there alternatives? It almost seems like they've disappeared. And do they work? Is it going to actually lead to a result? And I say that because, you know, there's so many times in life where myself, as a 43-year periodontal dental implant surgeon, that I have patients that come to me and they have had loss of confidence, loss of trust. They've had different treatments and techniques that were rendered. Some didn't work, some worked less than favorably. And you know, when it involves someone that you know, someone that you love, or someone who's young, who has the rest of their life to go, it's even more important, and it's really important always, but even more so. And so today we're very lucky to have with us someone who's going to share with us some techniques that actually work and an alternative technique. So let's take a look here, and we're going to introduce our guest tonight. An engineer, if you put up her images on the screen. This is athletic consultant Julia Allender. There you see her. Born and raised in San Jose, California, where she was a starting shooting guard and received numerous awards, and was named to the California All-State team in 2000 as an honor student at her high school. She started at the collegiate level, receiving honors as a starting shooting guard for the San Jose City College Jags, who were ranked in the top 10 in the country. Due to her great prowess and success, she received a Division I scholarship to attend Southern Utah University, where she finished her collegiate career as the Thunderbirds starting shooting guard. Allender began her coaching career in 2009 and spent 10 years as a college head coach. And to much of her acclaim, she won 3 conference championships, 3 Coach of the Year awards, and obtained bids to the postseason tournaments 9 of her 10 years. And engineer, if you bring her up live on the screen, we want to bid a warm welcome to Julia Allender to A Time for True Show. Welcome, Julia.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for that kind introduction.
Well, it's really amazing. If I have a basketball team, I'm going to pick you as one of the ringers, so I can win. So no
I'll, t-
problem.
I'll take it. Just let me stand there and shoot it.
I see that. I see that. So, you have so much you've accomplished. So I want to ask you right away is like, people are probably wondering, like, were you born with this? Did you always know that basketball would be your life passion?
Yeah, that's a great question. I loved sports as a young child. I have, my dad tells these stories when I was probably 7 or 8 years old. We lived across the street from an high school, and in the evening times, there's a men's softball team going on, or women's softball team practicing, and I'd be out there in my pink sweatpants, in the outfield, getting ready for my ups and not coming in for dinner. And I just loved sports. And early on, I was introduced to basketball from one of my childhood friends. And I just immediately fell in love with that sport, the competitive nature of it, all the skill sets needed to be very good, the team aspect of it. And, I found very soon that I was pretty good. I grew up playing with the boys. And so I just kept going, and I was extremely competitive. I'm a goal achieving individual. And so really early, I was like, okay, yeah, this is what I want to do. And I want to compete at a very high level. So that's how it worked out for me.
Interesting. It makes a lot of sense. And, as a star point guard in so many of the teams that you were on, what was your successful mindset, and what mantra did you kind of like have that you used?
Yeah, so there were two things for me that I hung on to very early. And I actually wore, we didn't have all these fancy, wristbands and different things that athletes are wearing now. But I would take a rubber band off of like vegetables. They would get wrapped with rubber bands, and they were thicker. And I would write courage on one of these rubber bands, and I would put it around my sock over my ankle. And for me, what courage meant is like, just go for it. Like, don't be worried about the outcomes. Don't be worried about the naysayers. This is your goal. Go for it. Be willing to put yourself out there no matter what occurred. So that was one of the first successful actions that I had. And the other one was, for me there, I really understood hard work, and I loved the process. I loved the process of getting better and putting extra time in and understanding what it took. And so what I viewed things, and I got this from my father very early in life, was like, look, he's kind of a black and white kind of guy. Like, there's no gray. You're either going to do it or you're going to get off, right? But, it's like, there's no such thing as failure. You do it or you don't. And if you fall short, that's on you. That just means that you did not put enough effort into it. And being that I had this extreme competitive nature, I just put all the effort I could. I mean, I would spend hours in my driveway shooting and perfecting these things. And so those are two things that I found for me early on that fueled my playing career, and then went on and fueled my coaching career as well.
Well, very, very interesting, because, in today's world, it seems like, well, it doesn't matter if you have confidence, however you feel is the gauge, and you're entitled to things, you don't have to work at things. And I always looked at that and I said, well, how would that work if you were out in the farm field somewhere and no one was growing any food for you? You wouldn't last too long. So everything you're saying to me makes so much sense. And to me, I think athletics is a great model, because it's like real life. And, when you were in the athletics, I'm just curious, because you must have had some down moments. What did you do when something didn't work out the way you wanted, or you didn't really do as well as you wanted in a game? Did that ever happen to you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've never met an athlete, nor have I seen one who's had a perfect career and have attained every goal that they set out to achieve with no shortcomings or failures or things of that nature. It's an interesting process. I know early, as a younger individual, in my high school days, those things hurt, right? You would have these emotions and you're like, I don't know what's going on, and why do I feel so sad, or why can't I overcome it? And then it would, continue into my junior college days as a player. But what I realized what was happening is like, well, why am I stuck in the past? Like, why can't I move forward, right? And I think any elite athlete has experienced times where you're elated, like you're playing in a big game and you're playing in a high competitive, meaningful game, and you make this incredible shot and this elation occurs and you're like, wait, what's happening? It's almost, a little bit like you get removed or you become bigger than, right? I think athletes will talk about these moments where, you feel almost superhuman. And It's like, well, what's happening? Why can't I always feel that way? And I had this moment of realization for myself when I went, wait a second, like, if I can do that once, I know I can do that again. So how do I now get control of that? And so there were these therapeutic skills that I got introduced to, these complementary therapeutic skills that really allowed me to unstick myself from these moments of loss under my control, when I can really understand what was happening and control it, and to put my focus into what is happening right now. And it is a skill. It's not this thing that you go, oh, overnight I can, do this all the time. And so the more I worked at it, the more I had those forefront ideals of courage, and there's no such thing as failure and hard work. And now I have this other aspect to it. It just built up this skill for me where those losses, they happened, but I knew what to do and I knew how to get over it. So, yeah.
Wow, that to me is so valuable and be so important to really get it out. And I'm curious, so now then you become a coach. And so what do you attribute, because you really had a lot of success. I mean, you got to so many post-tournaments, bids and whatever. So what do you attribute all the success that you experienced as a coach?
Sure. I think there's a few main points. One of them is the first thing I did with all of my players every year is I had them set their own goals, and I had them come up with their own purpose for their goals. I knew for myself that my success came because I had a goal and I had a purpose. And my purpose was to help people. That's been my purpose throughout the entirety of my life. I fell in love with the sport of basketball, and that's what I've used to be able to help people. And so I saw how much my purpose fueled my goal. And so we would spend, 3 or 4 days at the beginning of every season, and they would set these goals and have these purposes. And then we would come out with this strategic plan for each of them. And then you take their individual plan and you figure out how to then incorporate that in the team goal. I mean, I think any team's goal at the beginning of every year is to win the championship. I'm like, dream big, go big or go home. This is our goal, and we're going to work really hard to do that. So that was one of the main things we did. And then everything, you just have to figure out what has to happen in order for those individual and team goals to take place, right? You have to have policies. I'm not a rules person. Nobody likes rules, right? But we had these policies in place that, like, look, all these are for is to help you achieve your goal. Here's our standards, and then that they have to have the skill level, but more importantly is they have to have this mental performance. They have to be able to play present. They have to be able to get over losses. They have to be able to start to identify when certain things are, anxieties or fears are setting in, identify them, stop them, push them off, and move forward. And that's, kind of how some of those complementary therapeutic skills was able to transfer over as well, right? And then you just I just kept pushing these things. This is the goal. Here's your goal. You're getting better. They saw themselves improving. And when an individual can see themselves getting closer and closer to their goal and know that you are behind it and you are supporting them and you're helping them, I mean, they'll give you everything they got, and there's obviously strategy in basketball, which I also love, the ability to break down film and analyze and game plan and practice plan. But those are the things that I found I did a lot differently than the majority of coaches.
Very interesting, because you empowered each individual on their desire. It wasn't like something you imposed on them, right?
Yeah, I mean, our greatest asset, or one of them, is the ability to be self-determined, right? If an individual is self-determined, they can be determined on a higher basis where they're self-determined and determined for their teammates, but they're not gonna, I don't want them operating off of me pushing them. I want them to push themselves, right? And that's the difference maker, is that when you could see it kind of turn on for players as they would be in my program, you're like, okay, great. Now this kid's rolling.
Very interesting. And so as a coach, because I remember when I coached my son's soccer team when they were I guess they were 10 and 11, and I had a really good time. And they'd get hurt. And sometimes, my parents would come over and they go, and they, give a lot of sympathy. And I always thought it was a little strange. So I'm just curious, with this complementary therapeutic skills, how does that apply, let's say, if you got a player and they got injured during a basketball game?
Yeah, so I'll just start with myself first, right? And I had these ankle injuries that were pretty severe early on. I think I was 12 years old, and I really, really hurt my ankle. I didn't break it, but almost tore these ligaments, right? And at 12 years old, especially me, I just wanted to play basketball. I wanted to play sports. I wanted to play, flag football, right? And so you're looking for anything you can do to rehabilitate that injury, right? You're you got it in ice, you got it in hot, you're doing all the rehabilitative physically to make sure that it strengthens and it recovers and you get the swelling out, right? All of those are obviously vastly, vastly important. But I'm like, okay, this has got to go a little quicker, right? And so I was introduced into another complementary therapeutic skill, actually from my father. And going back to that moment of an athlete, right, where you have these moments of elation where that your mind is powerful, that if I have such self-confidence and belief in myself that I can achieve anything, right? If I can play present, I can play really well. And so I really started to figure out, okay, there's got to be something up with the mind, right? It's this powerful tool that really helps me perform physically. So can it then help me recover, right? And there are these therapeutic skills that actually put your body in better communication with itself to recover, because we know the body is a very powerful, it's just powerful, right? I mean, we make babies, we have babies, we recover from injuries, and it's a communication line, right? We have nerves that need to be able to communicate, we have blood vessels, we have cells that need to go in and out. I have my master's degree in human movement, and that's in exercise phys and anatomy. So I really dug this. I was like, yeah, this is very interesting to me. And so I would do this and the pain would start to go away. And I'm like, oh, well, this works. And then, do it some more, and I could see myself recover faster and faster. And it just made a lot of sense to me from an athlete perspective, because I knew that when I was mentally there and I was mentally, strong, and that I performed well. And so when I could apply that kind of same principle to these injuries, it was powerful, and it helped very much.
Very interesting. And so now you finished as an athlete, and now you go on to coaching, and you've had all this experience now for yourself. So that how did you then now transform or then model this as a coach? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think the first thing, that was really prevalent to me when I was coaching was, you get an individual coming into practice, whatever time we practice, they have got a lot going on. They're 18, 19, 20-year-old, 21, 22-year-old. They just came from class and maybe they didn't quite understand what was going on. Maybe they got upset with their professor. Maybe they're fighting with their partner. Maybe, they had a fight with one of their parents, right? And so there's a lot mentally that they have their attention on, that they're thinking about. And it was like this kind of struggle to get them, in athletics, we talk about playing present, the ability to play present. And that was a struggle at first. It's like, you could tell they have so much going on mentally. And so it was like, okay, great. So how can I get them to mentally be present in practice? And so I use one of these, almost every day to get them present, to get them, kind of realizing on their own, okay, yeah, I'm in practice. I'm no longer in class. I'm no longer in that fight. And our practices were so much better. They got so much more skill work done. They were able to achieve their goals a lot quicker, right? And then the other aspect of it, and we talk a lot about, or you hear a lot about in sports, is game anxiety or performance anxiety, right? And if we understand what anxiety is, right, by definition, it's like an uncertainty of what's going to happen in the future, right? I'm not sure if I'm going to perform well, and that's a lack of self-confidence. And we can go into all that. Confidence is the ability to make decisions. So if I'm a better decision maker and I can do that, but how do I recognize that during a game? Because that's a lot to do in a basketball game because things happen in fractions of seconds, right? But, some of these therapeutic skills will actually get the individual to recognize when these things start to turn on and get them back to playing present. Right. And so now I don't have these lulls. I don't have these slumps. I'm not stuck in losses, but you just have a very high ability to mentally perform. And anyone who's around elite athletics, this is where the great beat the good, right? This is, Kobe Bryant talks a lot about this. He was a very mental performance kind of guy. And that's the edge that he had, Michael Jordan and things of that nature. And then, obviously athletes get injured. It's going to happen, right? And there's factors around that make injuries prevalent. But again, applying those same skills of, great, let's get this injury to heal faster. Let's take that fear away. That's going, you sprain your ankle one time. Guess what? That fear sets in that it's going to happen again, and all that pain can't come soaring back in. And so, how do we get the mind to realize, well, we're not in that injury, we're now playing present, right? And so, yeah, go ahead. I can go on forever, so cut me off.
No, it's very, no, not at all. It's very interesting. What I want to say is that you actually were talking, and it just made this vivid scene come out in my office. I'll be a little vague so the person knows who I'm talking about. But, I came into the office, and I asked one of my staff to do something for me. And so I asked them to do something for me. And they said, yes. And, I'm talking to the patient. As I'm talking to the patient, I see that they're doing something else. And the patient and I are looking at each other, and we're kind of smiling at each other. And I said to the staff member, I go, well, can you do that for me? And the staff member goes, oh, yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm in the middle of doing. And so the patient and I looked at each other and kind of started smiling some more. So I looked at my staff member and got their attention and got them to stop. I didn't say anything. And finally, the staff member really looked at me, and they were kind of quizzical or, like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden, I said to them, well, remember I asked you to say that? He goes, yeah, yeah, yeah. They go, oh. And it's very interesting because that actually occurred today. And so as you were talking, it just came up very vividly in my mind. It was very humorous, very, very real. I agree with you totally, because as a surgeon, you know, it's very funny because years ago, I always wanted to be very competent, but I thought that was the key. But as the years have gone on, I see the keys were really, one was integrity, as you said, being really determined to do a great job. And the second thing was really to be there and not to be thinking about the last person or the next person or you know, some upset I had, and how important it was. So I totally agree with you. And, you know, these complementary, you know, therapeutic skills that you're talking about make so much sense to me. To me, it's something that has so much potential. You know, so what tidbits and pearls can you share with those people watching on, you know, how to reach their goals, and also more on what you've been talking about with how to recuperate and go forward? Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll touch on the second question first. You just mentioned the potentialities, and I think the potentialities are extremely high, because I think when any individual educates themselves on what drugs do to the body, you know, as an athlete, it's just going to detriment your skills. It's not going to allow you to perform at the highest of your ability. So anything you can put in instead of the use of painkillers or anti-anxiety or whatever it is that you're going on that aren't drug related, the higher your potential level as an athlete is, mentally, physically, technically, and the ability for the body to recover. So that would be the second part to the question. The first part is, I would say, dream big. That's got to be the first thing. Dream big, make it your dream. Understand that society is kind of set up in a way to beat our dreams down, but just hold on to it and keep going, right? And have that purpose that I talked about early. I think it's extremely important to strategically plan, you know, and that's simply just laying out, you know, we can call them mini goals or whatever you like, but you have a big goal and then you have these mini goals. And then you have, you know, daily things that you're going to do to achieve all these mini goals. And then the last few points is, you need to have the right people around you, right? Having an ability to know kind of who you can trust, in essence, who's going to propel you forward, and who's going to kind of maybe not directly, but subconsciously kind of pull you back and tear you down, right? I've seen that time and time again with athletes who have incredibly high potential levels, but they can't quite get themselves away from certain peoples. And unfortunately, they just never make it. And then I would just say, have that courage to go for it. Understand that there kind of is no such thing as failure, even though society makes a big deal about it. Simply just didn't happen for you. So pull yourself up by your own bootstraps and do it again.
You know, that to me is so true, because in the field that I'm in, it's very difficult, because, you know, you don't really get another chance. And so your statement is so true to me, is that you just have to pick yourself up and move forward. We're at the end of the show. And as any show that's really a lot of fun, it just flies. So we have maybe 30 seconds. What concluding statement would you like to leave our viewers?
Gosh, you know, lastly is, you know, we're in an information time, right? So there's a lot of false information, a lot of false data. Make sure that you have the true information. Make sure that you are close to people or reach out to people who have done it and who have proven successes, whatever that is for your life. It's like the stars are there for you to reach.
Beautiful. Well, you know, it's very interesting because it just came across to me as you're sitting there. Julia is like a jewel, and then your last name is, you're going to be the all that ends it all. And it's very, very interesting that we've had a show for all our viewers with someone giving pearls of wisdom as the jewel, giving us a way to end and to really get it all in our lives. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Julia, and for all of you, I hope you achieve your dreams and your goals, and we'll see you on the next episode of A Time for Truth show. Have a good night.
This show was sponsored by A Time for Truth Foundation Incorporated as a community service.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet